Welcome! Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible events in military history. This is a battle where the fate of an empire wasn't just decided by steel and numbers, but by a legendary duel of wits between two of the greatest minds to ever command an army. So, let's go back. Picture this. It's the year 208. We're on the Yangtze River at a moment so epic, poets would write about it for centuries. From a military history perspective, this isn't just another battle. No, this is the moment, the crucible really, that forged an entire era. All right, here's how we're going to break down this unbelievable story. First, we'll look at the two brilliant minds at the center of it all. Then we'll get into two legendary moves, the arrow gambit and a massive fire deception. We'll even talk about commanding the weather, and we'll wrap up with how this all created one of history's greatest rivalries. Okay, so let's set the stage. You've got the immensely powerful warlord Cao Cao leading a colossal force of 800,000 soldiers south. His goal? To finally unite all of China under his banner. He seems absolutely unstoppable, and his rivals, Liu Bei and Sun Quan, are forced into the shaky, desperate alliance just to survive. Now, at the very heart of this alliance are two men, two incredible strategists. For Sun Quan, you have the commander Zhou Yu, a true master of the battlefield, especially naval warfare. And for Liu Bei, there's Zhuge Liang, the sleeping dragon, a genius of strategy, psychology, and even the natural sciences. But this is where, from a historian's viewpoint, things get really interesting. Zhou Yu, a man of action, immediately sees Zhuge Liang not just as an ally, but as a future threat, someone whose intellect might just be greater than his own. And that tension, that rivalry, it's going to drive everything that happens next. So yeah, that conflict, it doesn't take long to bubble to the surface. Zhou Yu decides to test his rival to eliminate this threat early, and he does it with a deadly trap that he disguises as a simple, everyday military request. So, in front of all the other commanders, Zhou Yu publicly orders Zhuge Liang to produce 100,000 arrows. It's an impossible job. He gives him 10 days, knowing full well it would take craftsmen a month at least. But Zhuge Liang, he doesn't even blink. He ups the stakes himself, promising to deliver all of them in just 3 days. And then he signs a contract, agreeing that the penalty for failure is his own execution. And this is where we see just how differently Zhuge Liang's mind works. He isn't thinking about manufacturing at all. From a tactical standpoint, this is just a masterclass. He doesn't need forges or supplies. He just needs to understand 3 things perfectly: naval positioning, enemy psychology, and the weather. So for 2 days, Zhuge Liang does absolutely nothing. You can imagine the tension. Then, on the 3rd night, a super dense fog rolls in and blankets the river. He sails his boats, now covered in straw, right towards Cao Cao's camp. His aide is panicking, but Zhuge Liang, he just calmly sips his wine and listens as thousands of enemy arrows start thudding into the straw. He knew the famously cautious Cao Cao would never risk a full-on attack in zero visibility. By dawn, the fog starts to lift. The boats, now bristling with so many arrows they look like hedgehogs, turn to go home. And as they sail away, Zhuge Liang has his men shout, "Thank you, Prime Minister Cao, for the arrows." He comes back with way more than 100,000 arrows, a gift from the enemy himself. You can just imagine the scene when those arrows are unloaded. Zhou Yu is completely stunned. He has to admit it. In this particular duel of foresight and using the environment itself as a weapon, he was totally outplayed. And from that moment on, his admiration is poisoned by a much deeper, more dangerous jealousy. But don't count Zhou Yu out, not by a long shot. While Zhuge Liang was working his magic, Zhou Yu was the one actually architecting the main battle plan. And it was a grand strategy, a plan to find Cao Cao's biggest weakness and burn his entire navy to cinders. You see, Cao Cao's army was mostly northerners, and they were terrible sailors, getting seasick all the time. His solution? He had his warships all chained together, creating these huge, stable, floating platforms. Well, he solved the seasickness problem all right, but he created a much, much bigger one, a massive, floating tinderbox. And what Zhou Yu pulls off next is it's a masterpiece of psychological warfare. It's not one trick, it's a whole web of them. First, he publicly and brutally beats one of his most loyal veteran generals, Huang Gai, to create a believable reason for him to defect. Then, he sends a series of fake defectors who all feed Cao Cao the same story, playing on his arrogance and convincing him that chaining his ships together is a brilliant idea. So, from a military point of view, the trap is perfect. The kindling is ready, the deception is complete. But there's one huge problem that Zhou Yu can't control: the wind. It's winter, and the wind is blowing from the northwest, straight from Cao Cao's fleet toward his own army. A fire attack would be suicide. The stress of this single problem makes Zhou Yu physically ill. He's stuck in his tent, and no one can figure out what's wrong with him, until Zhuge Liang pays him a visit. He correctly figures out the illness isn't in his body, but in his mind. And then he says he has the power to summon the southeast wind they need. So, Zhuge Liang builds this 9-foot-high altar and puts on this huge, elaborate ceremony. To everyone else, it looks like he's performing magic, literally commanding the heavens. But what he actually knows, because he's a master of astronomy and meteorology, is that a seasonal weather pattern change was due any day now. The whole ritual? It was just incredible showmanship to cement his legendary status. And then it happens. The wind shifts. The banners suddenly start blowing from the southeast. Zhou Yu is filled with a mix of total awe and absolute terror. He realizes a man who can seemingly command the wind is way too dangerous to be kept alive. He sends assassins to the altar, but Zhuge Liang is already gone. He saw that move coming a mile away and had an escape boat waiting. With the impossible wind now at their backs, every single condition for victory has been met. The final, devastating act of the Battle of Red Cliffs is about to begin. Huang Gai's defection fleet sails right for Cao Cao's navy. But instead of soldiers, they're packed with reeds, oil, and anything that will burn. Once they get close enough, they're set ablaze. Pushed by that strong southeast wind, they're basically unstoppable missiles of fire, and they smash right into the chained-up fleet. The fire is just absolute. In one night, Cao Cao's dream of uniting China is literally turned to ash, and the stage is set for the era of the Three Kingdoms. So when we look back, what do we really see? We see two totally different kinds of military genius. Zhou Yu was the ultimate battlefield commander, a master of grand strategy, tactics, and deception. But Zhuge Liang, he was playing a different game entirely. He used the earth, the sky, and the human mind as his weapons, just as easily as any general would use a sword. Years later, after being outsmarted by Zhuge Liang time and time again, Zhou Yu would die young. And his famous last words weren't about hate. They were about this kind of cosmic despair. He cried out, "Since Yu was born, why was Liang born?" It was his final, painful admission that he'd met the one person he could never, ever beat. Their rivalry literally defined an entire era. It's a story that reminds us that sometimes it's that immense pressure, that one person who pushes us to our absolute limits, that forges the most timeless legends. Their duel of wits didn't just win a battle, it wrote history.